Hello, I'm Communications Officer Nia Douglas, and today the Supervisor of Elections, Sherry Griffin, is joining me for this very special GIS report as we discuss the Road to Elections 2023. So, Ms. Griffin, let's start by talking about you. You would have just taken on this role, I guess, rather recently. This is your first general elections, correct?
Yes, it will be.
So tell me about yourself. How did you come to be the supervisor of elections?
Well, Nia, an advert came out back in 2020, and I applied, went through the usual interview process, and was appointed to the post in February 2021.
And what's your background in?
My background is in actually criminal justice and sociology.
And how does that, for some watching, they might be like, well, what does that have to do with elections? How does that apply?
Well, my experience has been in working in elections. I've worked for the past 4 elections. I started working as a poll clerk, and I was also then promoted to a presiding officer where I filled that role for at least 2 past elections, the last being 2019.
And do you find that your knowledge of the law impacts your role?
My ability to understand the law has helped me make this transition towards being the supervisor of elections and now administering the process.
And can you give me an example of ways that the law intersects? Because a lot of people, I feel, don't understand just how much the Constitution, for example, comes into play when we talk about elections.
Well, the Constitution and the Elections Act are the legislations which guide the operations of elections. And so to have a firm understanding of those, then that is the driving force to your work. So it's not that it's Ms. Griffin's decision. My decisions are based on the interpretation of those legislations.
So you've been at the elections office for quite some time. What is it about that particular office that made you stay for so long? What do you like about it?
Well, I've actually only been there for the past 2 years, and it has been a challenge in terms of making the transition from the social service sector into this more of an administrative role. So what has been great is it has afforded me the opportunity and ability to hone my knowledge on our laws.
So in those 2 years, you held all those different roles.
Well, no, I transitioned from social development where I had been there for quite some time. So I last worked there officially in 2018 before I went to the RDA for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
And then I transitioned back over into government in 2020. I was at the magistrate court for a short stint before the post was advertised, and I was there until I transitioned over into the role. So at elections itself, I've been there for 2 years.
And then you held the different positions. Could you remind me again?
When I was at social development department, I was...
No, at elections, your different positions at
Well,
elections.
those positions would have only been temporary positions during elections.
Oh, okay, I
So they
see.
would have been poll clerk or presiding officer. So those were just temporary positions that come about during the election.
So you're very familiar with general elections, although this is your first as supervisor of elections.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about, we've spent some time talking about voter registration, the importance of it. What happens after you register to vote? What's the first thing that voters should do? So I went to the office of the supervisor of elections. I showed them my belongers card. I registered. What's next for me? Okay,
well, Nia, as you know, the House of Assembly is constitutionally due to be dissolved no later than the 12th of March. Following that, there will be an additional 2 days in which persons can register or transfer their registrations. Then shortly thereafter, within the next 2 days, the office has to publish the preliminary list of voters. So we're expecting and encouraging all voters to inspect the list to ensure that their name appears under the correct polling division.
Why is it so important to inspect that preliminary list? And do you have cases where, because people did not inspect the list, that there has been any complications?
It is important to inspect the list because of, I would say, two reasons. One, it will ensure that your name does appear on the list and that when you do attend the polling station, that you can expect that your name will be on the list of voters. Additionally, it is also for you to confirm ahead of time what is your correct electoral district and polling division, because in some districts, there are either one or more than one polling division. So it would be good for you to know which polling division you should appear to.
Okay, so where you are geographically determines where your polling division is, or is it possible, like for example, you mentioned to me beforehand that Virgin Gorda will have two possibly locations on the island itself. Does it matter which one you go to?
Yes, it does matter.
Oh, okay.
The territory is divided into electoral boundaries, and then within those boundaries then comprise the 9 districts.
Yes.
Then within those boundaries, the districts can be further subdivided into polling divisions.
Okay. So, for example, the ninth district is quite vast in the sense where we have two islands, two sister islands that make up the ninth district. So, for example, if I am registered in Anegada and I live in Anegada, but I work in Tortola, for example, could I vote in VG or will I have to vote in Anegada?
You will have to vote in Anegada.
Okay, understood. So it's important to check out the preliminary list because it will tell you where exactly you have to go.
It will tell you where your name appears on the polling division, and thereafter you will see in the publication what your actual polling station location will be, where it will be.
And that determines on the subdivisions
Yes.
within the district.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about transferring districts. What do I need to do if I moved? Am I supposed to transfer districts? Can I stay, for example, if I was born and raised in Brady Gut, East End, and I now move to Chawel Estate, do I have to change my registration?
You are encouraged to transfer your registration to reflect the area in which you reside.
And why is that important?
It is important because, in my opinion, in terms of representation, you should be electing or voting for the person where you're resident. I do understand that historically persons have attachments to certain areas, and for that reason they hold on to that. But if you look at it across the board in terms of representation itself, it can skew where a representative may inadvertently have a higher number of persons whose interests they should be addressing as opposed to others. I think it's best that persons should transfer their registration to allow them to vote in the area in which they reside, where they can get the maximum output and appeal towards their representative for representation.
Okay, so if I recently moved, how do I go about, what are the steps? I'm already a registered voter, but I've registered in the 7th, now I need to register in the 2nd.
Okay, well, you can come to the office. You will fill out form number 9. If you are the lessee or tenant within if it's an apartment building that you are renting, you can bring a rental receipt that has the address of the new residence in which you reside and a valid form of identification. Alternatively, you can use any other form of utility bill or metered bill, whether it be a phone bill, internet, water bill. If you are a homeowner, you can also provide a mortgage insurance certificate, because that will bear the name of the address of where the house is situated. For persons who do not have a bill in their name, they can get the main occupant of the household to prepare a notarized letter, and they can have that letter that stipulates that they are an occupant within the home, and provide that along with that person's identification and supporting document to confirm the said address.
Okay, so voter transfer, when is the deadline to transfer?
Just like voter registration, that deadline would be 2 days after the house dissolves.
Okay, so if I already registered and everything is good to go. But the House dissolves. I have 2 days to make sure I'm in the correct district.
Correct.
Okay. So after the preliminary list comes out and I find that everything's okay, I'm in the right district, I understand which polling division I'm going to, what happens to the days leading up after that?
Okay. In your case, if you have no changes to be made, then you will see the list will then be finalized, and then that will become the official list of voters. And technically, you will just listen to any other announcement pertaining to elections until it's time for your polling day, whether it's advanced polling, whether you qualify for advanced polling or polling day, which is election day itself. On the other hand, if you happen to see within the preliminary list that there's been an error or a misrepresentation in your information, providing that you did submit documentation prior to reflect a change, that is your transfer or the like, you can submit a claim within that 4-day period. And then there's also the ability for persons to object to someone's name being included on the list within that 4-day period. When you file an objection, the burden of proof as to why that individual should not be included on the list, the burden of proof is not on that individual, but more so on the person who's filing the objection.
Okay, understood. So when actual polling day comes, what do I need?
On polling day,
Yeah, what do
actual polling day,
the election day, what do I
polls
need?
are expected to open at 6 a.m.
Okay.
You will appear at your designated polling station. You must have identification, a valid form of ID, whether it be your passport, your driver's license, your NHI card, a belonger card.
And that's it?
And you will be checked in.
Okay, we checked in
By
if
a
you're
poll
at
clerk.
the correct polling division.
Yes.
Everything.
But if you're not at the correct polling division, the poll clerk can direct you to the appropriate location as well.
Okay. So it opens at 6 a.m.
Yes.
And when does it close?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. So if you're at the incorrect polling station, you'll have till 6 p.m. to get to the correct division.
Yes.
Okay.
Any voter that's in line at the time when polls are supposed to be closed, they will be allowed to vote once
Okay.
you're already in line.
So if you get in line
At 5:59,
and
you will be allowed.
there's
to
a
vote.
wait, you
Yes.
get to. All right.
Yes.
But if you come at 6:01, you can't vote?
No.
Okay. So get there before 6.
Providing the only how that you may be able to, if there was for some reason a delay in that polling station opening,
Okay.
then the hours would have been extended, and you will have up until that extension period to be in line before.
Okay, interesting. And I know we recently had information sessions for candidates.
Yes.
Could you share with me some of the things that you would have explained during those sessions?
Well, during those sessions, we went through again the voter registration and transfer process. As you know, candidates and political parties themselves will be or have been doing their own recruitment drive. So what the office was just trying to do is to ensure that they collect the appropriate information and complete the forms accurately.
Okay.
Because we would like to include everyone on the list once they are qualified. But of course, if there is an error in the application form or incorrect documentation submitted, that can preclude someone from being listed. And the onus then will be on the individual or the representative to ensure that the correct documentation is submitted before the preliminary list is posted.
Okay. And before we wrap up, can you just tell anyone listening or watching one last thing that they need to know before election day, if they've already registered to vote? Of course, we have been encouraging persons to register, but time is almost up. So for everyone who listened to us and went out and registered, what do you want them to understand about this process?
I would like for them to understand that maintaining current information with the Office of the Supervisor of Elections is essential to us having an accurate list. If you also happen to have a relative or a friend who may have been deceased, and you also during the preliminary list has seen that their name may still appear, and you have the death certificate, obituary, or the like, you can submit that information to the office, whereby we can endeavor to have that person name removed once we have the supporting documentation to confirm that the death has occurred.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today. We shared a lot of information, so hopefully that'll help guide persons. But of course, if you're watching and you have very specific individual questions, which tends to happen, there are different situations. You're not quite sure which district you're in, for example, or which subdivision to go. We always encourage you to contact the Office of the Supervisor of Elections. We'll have the number up on the screen and email address. And of course, the office is located on Main Street in the Crickeys building. So thank you for watching, and look out for the rest of our communications and polling locations for elections 2023.